think this is going to be a slightly smaller session than our normal ones. It's a little bit of an experiment, I was going to say. We thought it would be really interesting to get live reporting and discussion from New York Climate Week. So we've got 3 different people, all with very different or quite different backgrounds, joining at different times today. So because they're all ducking out of meetings and panels and so on. And so we're going to hear a bit from them, and then some of them are going to have to duck out at different times again. And then I thought we could have a bit of a discussion of what we think, because actually all of you could be at Climate Week probably, and we'll have lots of interesting opinions on it. So I hope that sounds right. The first person we have who's agreed to give us just less than half an hour of his time, or he's been on since 12 o'clock or 5 o'clock UK time, is my dear friend G. Gunnlaugur Erlendsson, who is the founder and CEO of an amazing tire technology company that makes better tires for electric vehicles. He has been doing that, I guess, since, I'm going to say 2012, something like
16.
that. 15.
2016.
And we met very shortly after G had set it up. So I have a vested interest in his success. And G was an Enzo, his company was an Earthshot Prize finalist last year. And I thought we'd just hear from a startup entrepreneur, why New York Climate Week, which starts with the UN General Assembly, and it's a lot about policy. So G, welcome, first of all. Be prepared for some difficult questions in the chat, which you may not have to answer. I just want to hear why did you decide to go to New York?
Yeah, so everyone's in town. That's the simple answer. If you want to tackle the US market in particular, this is the one week a year where decision makers are here. And of course, UNGA is happening at the same time. So hotel rooms are 3 times the price and almost unavailable. I've been coming here for the last 3 weeks. Last year, of course, we were nominated by Prince William for the Earthshot Prize. So we're here to do the public announcement of our position as a finalist. And yesterday was effectively our last kind of graduation, I would say, from the first phase of being an Earthshot finalist, which is the first year. And we've been, again, highlighting relationships, showcasing successes in the last 12 months, and really proving that the technology works and that the partnerships are solid. And I would say that the air and the ambience right now here in this part of the Climate Week camp is I would say very focused on moving away from talking about things. So I think ultimately the way that we see it from our perspective is that people are not now questioning the science, really. They're not questioning that the technology exists. The key thing that everyone is talking about is the availability of the finance to actually scale solutions beyond the standard high-scale solutions, the solar farms, the wind farms, and everything else. How do we scale the rest? And that is a really interesting discussion. Clearly not enough finance is flowing into all of these spaces that need addressing to really have the impact, but without scale, we won't have the impact. So yeah, it's been a cavalcade of chaos, if you can put it that way. It's full on. You barely have time to have a bottle of water, and you're doing 16-hour days and sleeping very little. But every point in the journey is about making ad hoc relationships while trying to figure out where you're supposed to be the next 5 minutes. So it's great. It's very exhausting, and I haven't slept very much.
Good. We should take advantage of that so that we can get you to answer really difficult questions on not a lot of sleep. And so in terms of key issue, you pull out finance and funding. Do you think that will New York Climate Week, the conversations, the panels that are going on, will they change that? Do you see any hope in that, both for Enzo but also generally?
I think I mean, stepping from us, we just closed the financing round and we're scaling, and also we're building relationships here. We're making some big announcement next week, which targets the United States in particular, and how we roll out here. We also announced recently that we are building a carbon neutral tire factory in the United States. So we're in the site selection and the early stage development of that with some great partners, many of which are here in town. But yeah, broadly looking at it, the money is here, but it's still hard to get it under the grasp of the big players who actually control the big tickets. And
Like
story
who?
building apps.
Like who? Can I
Well,
just, so let's
I would
dig into
say,
this. Get,
yeah, the banks and the pension funds in particular, and where, because we still live in a space where sustainability was almost like a bijou fund style. You know, you got a lot of investment funds with a couple of 100 million in them, but when they start spreading that around, there's not a lot of big checks available. Now you got the big players coming in, and the conversations are generally positive. The Inflation Reduction Act, of course, in the United States has catapulted funding. We were yesterday with Biden, where he was speaking about, you know, that there's been something in the region of $100 billion worth of funding, sorry, $100 trillion almost being targeted in the long run, but $100 billion already being proposed and on funding now track with the DOE and the loan program. So all of the money is here. The timing, however, of getting projects to scale is the tricky bit. And I would say that the trick, I would say, is profitability. Is if you are able to showcase that your solution is profitable, then whether it's sustainable or not is almost irrelevant. But when you're trying to fund something on the basis of altruistic principles at a premium pricing position to what is out there already, the struggle is clearly there still.
okay, interesting. And so you talked a little bit about sort of chaotic atmosphere. What's the best, sort of most unexpected event, panel, discussion, meeting, coffee by chance? You've been, you know, you name dropped beautifully Biden, which is probably one of the bigger names in town. Anything surprising, anything super interesting that you've gone, oh, I wasn't expecting that?
Oh, a number of things. I mean, being here is an ad hoc experience. You can only make so many plans. We were, as part of the Earthshot Brigade, we've been feted and supported by Bloomberg a lot, and then the whole Earthshot team around Prince William, and the whole cavalcade around them. And that's, you know, the Bloombergs, the Bill Gateses, the Bezoses, that's just the Bezoses, and then the rest of it. And I would say that people are actively searching for solutions within this community, and also they want to be seen at doing stuff. I would say that that's part of the picture. There is this black cloud hanging over New York, which is the election.
Yeah,
and a lot of critical parts in the discussion at the moment are pending. And we're only about a month and a half away from the election cycle. People are already putting, I would say, plan Bs in place in terms of what happens in terms of their projects if there is a Trump presidency. I would say that the general feeling is that things will simply go on because, you know, Texas now has more wind farms than California. So you have a situation where the economics and the scale that is already happening won't be stopped by a Trump presidency on the stuff that is already at the financial level, at scale, profitability, etc. What will, however, potentially suffer from that is the withdrawal of the IRA, if that happens, and the restrictions back on what is authorized to go through the existing programs, even under the DOE loan program in particular, which is of course separate to the classic IRA situation. So at least on the grant side. So many of the up and coming solutions, the ones that haven't quite broken through at scale or profitability, are the ones that potentially would suffer in the long run, but kind of like the overall decarbonization of the electricity grid. And those momentums are effectively not going to be held up by, I think, a presidential candidate like Trump.
And perfectly, I don't know if you saw Paul Haney's question, but he was talking exactly about that. Does that answer your question, Paul? Yeah, good. That's perfect. because so what you're saying, what I'm hearing, interestingly, is not, whilst everybody's flying in globally to New York, everything you're saying seems very American focused. So does it have a feel still of America as the central piece in this, both with the election and yeah?
It's a tricky one. We won't combat climate change without China. Let's be honest. It's literally building all the building blocks for decarbonization, whether it's solar panels, electric cars, and other technologies. And that's the kind of the big missing piece in the whole conversations here. But a lot of the underpinnings of what's happening here is actually in secret or in not so secret, basically depending on Chinese inputs, whether it's battery technologies or otherwise. I would say that seems to be coming to there's at least from the democratic side, there's a less of an aggression on that piece, because there's a reluctant acceptance that this will have to be worked out with China. Yeah. But they don't want to basically highlight that before the election. I would also say that following on from what happened in Dubai, and I think a number of people probably who are on the call may have been there or had a lot of experiences from it, is that I think Dubai was the first time that businesses showed up en masse to COP.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conversations that are happening here seem to be follow-on conversations that were announced at COP. Large decarbonization strategies with heavy industry, for example, which was set up and announced by Bloomberg at COP, is something that they're now heavily promoting here, and now they're putting the bones and the meat on that. So that was also a big piece with the global business forum yesterday. And also, I think that they're kind of putting the Legos together, having made all these grand announcements at COP. Now, the Legos are still not in working order, and they're not quite there yet, but the pieces are being held by the players, and they're being assembled as we speak. So I think that overall, that is a positive trend. I think, on the other hand, of course, people are literally going to jump from a plane here to go to Baku.
Well,
and people are people are expecting a little bit of a pushback, or at least on some of the commitments that were already given at Baku. People here are talking almost about Brazil next year, and already in advance of saying, look, we have 14 months or 13 months until Brazil. And ultimately, the interesting dialogue, I think, is that everyone is being a bit careful what they say in the public domain, because they don't want it to become a politicized statement what they're actually doing. So I would say that announcements are more on the practical side rather than bigger players saying new things.
Yeah, because there's been as ever, there's been an awful lot of reports, etc., coming out to in the last couple of days, of course, and opinions and so on. Do you feel, does it feel like there's anything new? Is there anything you haven't heard?
Does it feel it's a good question. What's new, I would say, is that there's a very clear transition between what's happening from the Biden administration to whatever comes next.
Yeah.
And what's new, I would say, is you can clearly already see that the Biden legacy is being packaged and put a bow around it and wrapped and put on the shelf, with expectations that Kamala Harris presidency will still change things. So I think the situation is there is a momentum going forward, but there's more realism in what can be achieved in the time frame that we're given. And I do think that we need to kind of take a pinch of salt and say that, look, everything that we hope is not going to happen at the pace we're expecting. Even if Kamala becomes president. And I think that what was a bit surprising is that you see this kind of generational shift between the old guard and the new guard. Now, it's very subtle, but it's manifested basically in the people who are in the rooms where it happens. And for this year, of course, we've been very fortunate to be in these rooms as well. But I think that ultimately I think there's a generational shift happening in this space. And again, it's away from talking about it into doing about it. But to get the finance involved in it, it needs to have scalability and profitability attached to it. and a deliverability. And the deliverability is, impossible without Chinese inputs. That's the kind of
and so just
underlying fundamental point on that.
So on that, thank you. No, that's perfect. On that, because I can see one of our other fantastic, I'm going to say, speakers has just joined, Karine. One question that came up for you, G, is, does China want your tires? And what's your to balance that out if you're saying you're building a carbon neutral factory in the US? Can you still be engaging with China? Just between us and the YouTube channel.
I mean, we know the top Chinese manufacturers. We know the top European, the top American manufacturers. We speak to all of them. And I would say that there are definitely partnerships in our side from Enzo's perspective, where we want to make sure that electric vehicles are successful wherever they are. And we want to make sure that tire pollution, which is a big constitution of air pollution in cities in particular, in the UK, we're breathing more tire pollution than tailpipe pollution already today, and that's been signed off by DEFRA and Chris Whitty. So ultimately now tire pollution is this unregulated, massive source of air pollution, a massive source of microplastic pollution. It has toxic implications and a lot of waste, and that's simply driven by the industry wanting to sell you more tires and not adopting the technology that we're adopting into our products. I think from our perspective, we are never going to make every tire on the planet, but we will definitely cooperate with any player that wants to achieve better outcomes in reducing air pollution in cities. And we would be very happy to work with Chinese companies to deliver that within China. The trick here is that whatever goes and sells in China will have to be made in China. And that these are the complexities behind everything that we do, is that we do quite a localized industry, and the Chinese manufacturers are able to achieve certain scale, whatever technology. America is behind on some of the most fundamental parts. And just to put a nice bow around it, America doesn't make enough tires, which is why the State Department and the Commerce Department is supporting us quite heavily. We have US Exim Bank looking to fund the factory with us, which is under their Make More in America program, because America makes roughly 1 out of every 3 tires, and the ones they make are kind of crap. So ultimately, you don't want to make more of what they make today, and they don't export any American tires internationally because nobody wants to buy them outside of America. So we've kind of picked one of the largest markets in the world, which has one of the highest amount of investment capital available in a market segment that's highly profitable but completely underserved, particularly when it comes to electric cars, because they're not efficient, they're not durable, and the technology levels are simply lower than even the Chinese are. So way we play the game here is that we see the need being the highest in the United States rather than any other market on the planet.
Wonderful. I'm going to pause you for a second. I know you've got to go off at past. So anybody who has specific questions for G, please do enter them, because I saw Karine de Meyer appear. There you go. Now she's spotlighted. Karine, welcome. Thank you to our little club.
I hope I do not have too much noise around me. I'm in Doll's house. I'm fine.
So no, I think it's good. And just get a little background on Karine. She is an amazing visionary impact investor, female leader, human rights activist. I can keep going. Has done a lot of social entrepreneurship, really lifting networks and women and investment sort of up and together. So you're providing, for me at least, a really special insight and lens to Climate Week and all that. And you, because of your years and years of dedicated work, have a lot of access to different places. So you are in Goal's house. Give us what's Goal's house and why are you there specifically?
Well, I think Goal's house is actually where the Hurry Up group was founded 3 years ago during COP26, as you know. And the Hurry Up group, which is something I founded together with 2 men, because I think we cannot solve any gender equality without a man. And actually, Enzo, you were my inspiration on Friday at the Summit of the Future. And I just want to
Thank you.
I really enjoyed you were actually saying it as it is, and that's what I like, because there's a lot of blah blah, And the reason why I think coming to Climate Week, even before it was called Climate Week, is because former President Clinton started the Clinton Global Initiative in 2005. And I was, at that time, I just graduated from Harvard Kennedy School to focus on women's equality and social entrepreneurship. And I was one of the lucky ones to be invited. And I've actually continued attending that conference for the last 20 years. And literally in those 2 days, you literally get a state of the world. I mean, it's like the state of the union, but then the state of the world. And I love hearing, and also, as you talk about how the youth is really coming, they're having a much stronger voice. That already started at COP26, actually. I remember when I was, we had the climate march there in the rain in Glasgow.
Yes, in Glasgow.
Also all the indigenous people that were there. I mean, I really think that the pandemic shifted the narrative to other groups that had never really been seen and heard. And I think because we were all communicating through this way, which has now become a normal way of communicating for people, I think we were able to actually include many, many people. I was actually in Costa Rica during the pandemic, and one of the most ecologically, sustainable, conscious countries. But I'm also there seeing enormous shift, unfortunately, not always towards the good things. Anyway, why I'm in Gold's House, Gold's House was founded by Freud, which is an agency, together with the United Nations, to really emphasize the 17 Sustainability Development Goals. So all the sessions that are being held here, I actually just walked out one on oceans and how we can reverse the process. People are, a lot of the climate is green climate discussion, whereas water is 73%, of the globe. So, we should be much more focused on what's happening in the ocean because it's actually affecting all of us. So all these sessions here are really about, radical collaboration, trying to bring different mindsets together and having interesting discussions. And my whole mission in life is about raising consciousness when it comes to gender equality, about finance. As you know, we are both part of the Hurry Up group. There's always a lot of talk still about 1.5 degree. Well, if you listen to Johan Rupström, he says we are already way past that. We have to focus on climate adaptation. So financing needs to go towards different kind of mindset. So I think we use these weeks to educate ourselves. I always leave hopeful here. Because I think when people come together, beautiful things happen. They actually take the time to listen to each other. And and I love it that there's so many young children here. But I also feel bad because I don't think my son, who's 24, should be worried about the things that he's actually already worried about. At least I don't remember I being worried when I was 24 at that. So I think we all are here, to actually give them a future.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know there's a couple of 24, 25-year-olds on the call, so I'm going to encourage them to put comments in the chat, please. And Carine, you also said, interestingly, you started with, there's quite a lot of blah, blah, blah. So it's refreshing to hear a G, or yourself, because you always say it as it is, I know. I've seen a couple of sort of LinkedIn posts this week referring to this Climate Week as kind of Davos for nerds or Burning Man for nerds, and then remarking, and actually both Davos and Burning Man seem to be on the wane rather than on the up. Does New York Climate Week feel like it's still super relevant and one of the places to be versus I'm going to say Davos?
I think this is, and we were saying with Mark and Geoff last night, we said this is way better than Davos. I've actually been attending Davos since, 2008 maybe. First of all, everyone is so focused on one thing here now this week. And I think when you're in Davos, to be quite honest, even the finances and the focusing, it's much easier for social entrepreneurs right now. As you know, I represent a couple of them. I bring them along to my basket with CGI. And one of them was able to pitch her project this morning to the top CSOs from all the big corporations. That would not have happened for her in Davos because she would not have gotten past, the web regulations. And so I think here people are more open to do business. And so maybe you can actually confirm that. But I see that. I see people being more hopeful here.
What do you think, G?
Yeah, absolutely. People are reaching out to you, and again, there's no entry fee to come to New York. You can sign up to a number of sessions, and get in to lots of places. And it's more like a rock concert where you don't have to pay a ticket, but you have to find, you know, the right star. I mean, yesterday I was at Gold's house, and you know, we've been having this massive dinner with you know, effectively kind of congratulating our year in Earthshot, with the people that have kind of kept us, supported us, and kind of cheered us on for that year. We then kind of like, you know, are sitting there having a cocktail, and Leonardo DiCaprio comes in and starts having conversations with us. And we're like, you know, we are small companies trying to make a big difference. And as Hannah and Prince say, you know, we half the work for us is simply promoting you as an entity that is solving a problem. The other half is to get the rest of the industry to follow you. And because that's the storytelling. Storytelling is so much part of what we do as part of this ecosystem here, and getting across to people repeatedly, meeting them again, because you're not going to have one meeting and suddenly everything happens. I was just with Amazon downtown now, and I just ran up here. We're you know, and we've been working with them and engaging with them, and you know, you suddenly ran into the person who's the lead sustainability in our field with Amazon, who we met at COP, and he's like, you know, how you doing, and where are we on this thing, and here's the new thing we've done with you guys, and ultimately these collaborations are human discussions. We need to bring climate to the human level, where it becomes people and friendships, and you know, Cristina Figueroa said yesterday, it's the mycelium network of sustainability or climate.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of like a network that kind of grows and grows and grows and actually goes everywhere. And I think that is what New York can do. There are echoes in this when you now went to COP last, you know, in December. I'm sure there are echoes of this in other events as well. But nothing, I think, compares to the scale, the ability of deploying real capital and getting stuff done, like New York Climate Week. And I think it's on the ascendancy. We're going to see this go forward. I think it's going to be, you know, whatever happens in the election cycle, this thing is going to stay. But I think the critical thing is that people are tired of hearing stuff being done in the future. They want to see it happening on the ground. And I think that is basically the message right now. You can show that it works. There's a lot of available support and capital to make it happen at scale. And that's global, because here we're showing global, and the UNGA connection brings the global element here as well. So you're running into the Prime Minister of Fiji, you know, and he's saying, well, I need more solar panels. You know, it's all kinds of conversations like that, random out talking and everywhere.
On that note, G, I'm kicking you off because I know you've got a very important business meeting to go to now. So then we get to have Karine for a little bit longer. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to, on G's behalf, if anybody has any more questions, just pop them in the chat and I'll make sure he answers them somehow in the and I'll put them in a follow-up email. Yes?
Love you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. Bye for now. We will get rid of him. So I want to hear more. So I'm seeing questions around how would you make Climate Week overtake Davos? Has it already happened? And so on. Yes, it was your opinion, right?
Well, it feels to me, and the thing is that I ask it to the entrepreneurs because they're the ones who have the solutions, but they're always the ones looking for capital. And of course, you know, in the beginning, they get capital from the people that they know, you know, the friends and family, and they're usually bootstrapped. But if you really want to make an impact, you have to grow. And I think there's not enough money in the world for scale-ups, at least not within the environments where people are. So when they come to this, you know, when they step out of their comfort zone, like Enzo, but also like Mark Jankovic or Job or Sophie and everything, all of a sudden they realize, wow, and they feel that their story is resonating. Well, I mean, you know what Sophie wants to do. You know, she wants to raise the consciousnness about climate emergency, but also for people and actually empowering people. Because, you know, I mean, these days, the younger generation want to work for a company which feels is very much aligned with their values, you know. And if that company is not aligned, then they want to at least try to empower the, you know, or at least try to educate maybe. And so all of a sudden I see a different Sophie after 3 days having been here. She's like, wow, she said, you're right. And she said, I do not feel that in Davos. Because it's a different, it was, you know, and I think it's beautiful. 20 years ago, it was United Nations General Assembly and CGI, and there were no events. And every year one has been added. I mean, now it's amazing. I think there are like 60, 70 events simultaneously. Yeah. And that's attracting people to come. So,
And in terms of sort of in terms of policy changes, because I think it's really clear that you're seeing entrepreneurs getting both hope but also funding. You're seeing lots of relationships being formed, collaboration coming through. Are you seeing policy shifts also happening, or do you think we've got to wait for COP for that to really sort of mature and come to fruition?
No, I actually just walked out of this session here, and apparently this morning there was a policy was accepted, and I think when they started there were 7 people joining, and now I think like 35 countries signed it. It was, and I think it's called the 100% Alliance, and I think Macron is very much supporting that. And so they were actually very, she was even surprised that actually my country didn't accept it, the Netherlands. I was very disappointed. So I had to put some pressure, in the back. But that's the good thing here is that this is all being shared. And that's why Goals House is sort of like an extension of the UN. Because, I mean, not everyone has accreditation, for sessions to go inside. And also, I'm actually trying to stay away a little bit from the UN this week because it's cost me a lot of time. And I can use that time often better for other things. And this house is actually being, used in a way to share a lot of the policies or a lot of new decorations that are actually, coming together. Like Sunday was a big day with the Summit of the Future and, and the acceptance of the digital compact. I mean, I used to run the Women in Technology movement. And so I know empowering women through technology, empowers them and also their whole generation, of them. And it makes them feel included. So that was a big thing on Sunday, for example.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so in terms of, so we take this feeling onto both Cali in Colombia for the biodiversity COP and then onto Baku. How important is it as a building block? Is it
well, this is interesting because we had this talk about last night. So who is going to Baku and who's not? And I have a hard time going for the 3rd time to an oil producing country, in that sense. So, it was in Sharm el Sheikh, last year was Dubai, and now in Baku. So I'm hearing people not going, but then I know some people have to go. I feel people are more focusing on Brazil. I know I am. Also because, I think we had a big achievement last year in Dubai. Huh? I mean, even though the wording was not exactly how we all wanted it, but at least, there is a trajectory set up. And that's going to take time for countries to implement. And that won't happen within 1 year. So I'm focusing, there are lots of people here focusing on Brazil.
Right. And on that note, what do you want out of Brazil, by the way, just while we're here? What do you think?
Wow. I mean, it would be amazing, if we could actually really, I'm always thinking people will start using renewable energies and everything once it becomes cheaper.
Yes.
Then,
market.
And I'm hoping that the power of that message in Brazil, will actually be more resonated.
Right. No, that makes sense. And taking a step back, before you joined, G was talking a lot about sort of the chaos and not having slept in New York, that it was just on the go all the time, and that he could only pick a few meetings and then just go with the flow for the rest. When you've gone into this week, what have you kind of wanted to really focus on seeing or being? And has that worked out so far? What has been the most interesting piece? You talked about the oceans, which I would love to come back to if we've got time.
Well, as Mary Robinson said, where women come into the lead, action follows. And it's really something that I'm seeing happening. And what I'm liking is that on one hand, we have the wise, so the elders, who are sharing their wisdom. Nice. But we also see that they are the mentors for the youth. And we, with our network, the middle-aged ones are actually facilitating and bringing them along. And, and really, it was interesting because actually the Hurry Up group, which is really founded to accelerate, finance to innovation. We're actually the Gen Z, the Generation X.
Yes.
We are that Generation X. And actually, it feels very comforting that we are part of a cohort and that we have a mission, because I think all the wisdom of the elders should not be forgotten, and we are the translators to making it more, accessible for the young people.
That's
I
beautiful.
mean, I love seeing a Mary Robinson with their Batista, I think her name is. I mean, that really makes me feel
incredible. And maybe because maybe we could just take a minute or two on the Hurry Up group, because I don't know how many people in this call are aware of the Hurry Up group. So Karine said she founded it at Glasgow in Goals House a couple of years ago. And what I've seen has been this incredible mushrooming of it. So I guess there's about 300 people who are, in essence, a WhatsApp community who are really actively supporting each other in terms of platforming, in terms of making connections, and so on. And I keep comparing it to, this is how power is going to look in the future. Really, instead of being the centralized, do you get a pass from the guys at WEF for Davos or not? I'm going to say underground, but not underground at all. This group of people who we all know we're change makers in the group, and we all commit to really trying to support each other as much as possible in as many different ways as possible. Is that fair? Is that your vision? Do you just want to talk a little bit to it? I think it's worth promoting because it is so interesting and quite unique in many ways.
Well, I'm so glad that you are referring to it, because I just came out of the session which was led by Amy Bradshaw, and she's the CSO for EY, and to have these women be in the group. I mean, they have multiple WhatsApp groups, but like they will say also Sandrine, Dixon Leclerc or Steve Adapter from EIB. I mean, they all say, wow, there is a unique energy to this, because it's unconditional love, and we all want each other to have success, and and to be able to provide solutions or investment money or our networks to make the world a better place. And I think it all comes down to the fact that I was educated at a women's college, so competition was not something that I was surrounded by. And I saw my friends who were educated at the co-ed university or college, they were, they're always competing to try to get the alpha male and everything, and they were not all able to to really stand in their own strength. And I really think that's the deeper foundation. But I also knew during my women's studies that we need men in order to reach gender equality. And that's why my two co-founders are male. And I like that. And they are embracing it. And I think somebody said, Amy said it this morning, and apparently the Lincoln Project came out with and people should look it up. They apparently came out with a video or something. Yes, they said, real men vote for women. Nice. Or support women or whatever. And I was like, wow, I like that one.
Brilliant. Carrie, I can talk to you about the Hurry Up Club. I'm seeing that on there. And I'm just going to talk about generational differences is common about climate change and so on, but it sometimes annoys me because I'm the old brigade, and I know lots of young people who don't seem interested, even though I'm acting, and we need everybody on board. Can we break down the silos, not reinforce them? This is Ran. There's a little question for you, Karine. What do you think? Go.
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking about the silos. And I think this is exactly, last night I said, because somebody said, well, you're the one who has kept all of us together for 3 years. I said, yeah, and I actually have a day job doing that because you guys are so active. And I want to feel that everyone is being acknowledged for what they think. But I see myself as like the Maizena of this group. And maybe that's what exactly like you said. I think we are weaving the new systems. I think this leads to system change. Because silos, then are, I said it, they have a wall around them. I like to break down the walls.
There we go. I hope that answers your question, Ran. I'm not sure it's a direct answer, but pretty good. I'm aware of your timing, Karine, as well, because I know you also have to duck out at some point. I guess I'm just really interested in your opening comment, and I just want to come back to it really briefly on the oceans piece. I still don't understand why we're not moving faster on the oceans. Why is that still so nascent? Have you, I'd love to just hear anything you've heard from from the last couple of days on what are the barriers? How do we actually move forward on that?
Well, I can only talk from my experience in Costa Rica. And it always has to do with the shift of government. So the current government is actually run by a guy that wants to make as much money as possible. Whereas the previous government was much more socialist, but was also the one that actually got the Earthshell Prize, that before being the most, ecologically conscious country. And then in the last 4 years, we've seen, and actually the woman who is now running the World Research Institute in America, she's Puerto Rican. She said, I just saw the data for the oceans, actually where your house is. And she said, it's not looking good. And she said, there's so much pollution going. We have the Rojo Mare, which is like the Red Sea. It's usually 2 months. Now it's almost 6 months. When the rainy season starts, the beach cleanups, we need to have so many of them now. I mean, and they haven't focused on education. They haven't focused on their own people, but they're so focused on growth. And growth means that people are going to, consuming much more. They're going to buy things that they don't need. Whereas, Costa Rica was actually a pretty balanced country until actually, like 10 years ago. So, and what I see is that there's a lot of conflict within the governments too. You were talking about the policies. I'm often here, even also within the Netherlands, that, there are like topics that I would expect my country to actually, implement. And then I hear through other channels, oh no, the Netherlands actually put a halt on the implementation of that. So, I mean, there are all these invisible blockages. And it's always people. It's always in the mind of the people, and it's the systems. And so I really hope with the hierarchy, that's why I would like to bring in more politicians or people from the public sector. I think, because I think they can also explain more to us how these systems work.
Yeah, and we need the people who understand the current system in order to really use it and change it.
Exactly.
In ways.
Yeah.
Brilliant. On that, because I'm aware you have to leave. Obviously, you were educated in the United States. I know that you've been super active politically, and I just want to hear your thinking around with the New York Climate Week sort of lens on is what's going to happen in each case. Obviously, we're moving from a Biden administration, whether we move to a Harris or a Trump, and let's all cross our fingers that it's a Harris. Do we think that there are, what are the changes that will happen? Will that accelerate the positives you've seen this week, do you think? Obviously, it would be more than a Trump, but how is that going to differ? Are people holding on to their money, waiting to see what's happening? What's your thinking of how this election is really practically changing things?
Well, yesterday, and we were also talking about last night. Yesterday, the Secretary of the Ministry of Energy, I think her name is Jennifer Gulstrom, she was like jumping on stage. It was kind of interesting, and she said, I am so excited to be living in 2024 because our children and grandchildren are going to say that's the year when it all shifted. And Monday night, I had a dinner with Octopus Energy. Fiona's also in part of a group. And it was the same story. I mean, there is so much positivity out there, actually, when it comes to renewable energy. And even and America is also doing much better than that we actually all know, because the storytelling just hasn't been good about it. But then in June, when I was in London during Climate Week, John Kerry, I think we were both at the same event, he said, at that time, I think people were still expecting Trump to win. To be quite honest, I think he was winning. He was definitely heading towards a win. I think now there's a chance he can win. But still, I don't know, because, you can win the popular vote, as we all know, in 2016. But if you don't win certain states, you're not going to win. But, John Kerry said, I have trust and faith in this country, even if we will have a hiccup, that the private initiatives that are already happening, and that's what I think we're feeling and seeing here this week, will continue. I mean, you can never take consciousness away. And maybe I think there will be more efforts. Maybe people will feel, maybe the youth will even, I think I'm only hoping, and that's what I'm hearing right now, is that the Democratic Party is putting all its energy in activating the young people to vote. And because of everything with Israel that's happened, everything, you know,
Sure.
a lot of young children are, of course, critical of the government, you know, rightly so in that sense.
Yeah.
That it's their future. And so I think the children are going to, and so what was the most, I mean, if you ask me what was the most intense moment of CGI this year, was when Mohammed Yunus came on stage yesterday afternoon, along with the 3 student protesters, leaders who had actually led the movement. And he said, this is what real change looks like. He said, I can only be like the master now, or like the sort of like the convener,
Yeah.
and to protect them, because they're now also a threat. Can you imagine? And these kids are 21 years old. But they literally were standing in front of the guns and saying, how many more bullets do you need to fire? But we will not accept this anymore. And I mean, I'm worried about what's going to happen here on the 5th of November. I'm actually going to be here because I want to be part of it.
Yeah.
But I'm very worried that if she doesn't win with a landslide, and it's going to be close, which everybody's expecting, that, you know, Trump is going to, you know, rally up the MAGA people to go out, and that they're going to have a civil war.
Yeah.
But I think the climate, I mean, you cannot take the consciousness away from people.
No.
And I think people are seeing it. I mean, we've had more rain in Costa Rica than ever before. All the typhoons. I mean, the drafts. I think, you know, I think the 22nd of July was the hottest day in history. You know, I mean, if those stories stick to people's minds, and that's why Sophie Lambert is so important, what she's doing with her, you know, because she wants to bring the power back to the people.
Absolutely. And no, that's wonderful. And it actually gives me a little bit of goosebumps for the Mohammed Yunus piece, right? That
that was, everybody was, you know, crying, because this is what change looks like.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, we all know how Mohammed Yunus was ostracized, you know, by Hashmi, you know, I mean, and all these world leaders had to write letters, you know, in order to keep him out of jail. Whereas this man has only been of service to humanity, literally, also in America. I think you have 36 Grameen banks here.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm just so grateful for these young children who are supported by him.
Absolutely.
So that's the function, I think, of our generations, of the elders, Generation X, that we facilitate the youth.
Yeah, because I would say, so my daughter, who's 21, she a couple of years ago was in a convening with me, actually, a European Bauhaus in Brussels, and somebody said, well, you know, it's now over to the youth, and she protested quite. She said, excuse me, you have all the power, you have all the resources. I want to make a change, but I can't do it without the support of the generations above me. She pushed back quite hard on this idea that, oh, the young people, it's your problem now, kind of thing. But I love your we're going to steward this through. We're going to translate from the elders to the younger people and protect them, because they didn't have to be thinking about this, as you say.
Well, the thing is that we are all connected, and I think people tend to forget that. I mean, that's something that we can learn, you know, from these countries where the tribal energy, you know, is much more bedding. And I think, you know, with the Hague, I also tried to be bedding for all these warriors, you know, out there.
Absolutely. And just to round off sort of New York Climate Week, what all of us who either decided not to go or couldn't go for some reason, what do you think the biggest thing we could, so either is there a panel you've seen so far that we should be looking up and listening to, and or is there something I was going to say we should be doing, or why would you encourage us to go next time, fill up New York even more?
Well, I mean, I think you can even hear, I think everything is being, you know, live streamed, and I mean, you know, you don't have to travel anymore, and you don't have to make the cost. I mean, CGI, for example, you can follow everything, you know, it's like a 2-day live stream. And I mean, and from what I hear from people who have been listening to it, you know, from afar, they say it almost feels like I was there.
Okay. But then you don't get the, as you say, the human connection.
Well, why you go to these conferences is because you have these, you know, incidental meetings that may lead, you know, to something beautiful.
Wonderful. I'm just looking at, and as if by magic, Ran has popped in. What should we do in preparation for COP, do you think?
What does Ran do? I would like to just hear what he does.
Go for it, Ran. You can unmute and just say.
I am an architect Australian, originally based in the UK. I promote sustainability in the built environment, generally try and do research projects where I can, pushing for sustainable new build homes. So sort of broadly across that built environment spectrum.
Well, you would have loved the last session yesterday with Francis Carré and President Clinton, because it was all about, about the built environment and to hear from him coming from a tiny village in Burkina Faso and then, becoming the first architect in the world to actually get the Pritzker Prize. And I think he built, I think he made a beautiful building in Bangladesh, which is all about sustainability. I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't even realize that, but most of the CO2 emissions actually come from the whole built environment.
Yeah, it's massive.
So, absolutely. So that was one of the discussion, one of the topics yesterday. There. So yeah, when it comes to COP, I mean, I'm now going to feed the ones who are going. I think it's sort of like the ones that were going to Sharm el Sheikh, I think are going to Baku, but it'll be smaller. I think there will be less people going. And I think it's just, we just need to keep on supporting the people that go.
Yeah. And as you say, a lot of people feel like they're preparing for Brazil, that Brazil will sort of be one of those pivotal COPs.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed a lot of Brazilians are here, also Change Now. A lot of Brazilians are elected Change Now for president. So I definitely see, subconsciously, there is a focus there. I mean, we cannot change things. Although I must say in America, I've been blown away. Oh yeah, that's one thing I do want to say. I have felt, because Kamala Harris, and there's a potential of her maybe becoming, the first female president, but also beating Trump. I think that's even, there is hope back in this country. People are nicer to each other. The taxi drivers are nicer. There's less aggression on the street. I mean, of course, there's still lots of homeless in New York, but that's a problem that comes from other things. But I think people can let down a little bit their guard. I think if you have this energy of a Trump, it backfires to everyone, also to Democratic state. And I'm just feeling that there's a little bit more. We're actually not that crazy, I mean, we actually are human. And, I mean, she has so much love that she radiates, of course, there's always, I mean, we need to prepare the next month. That's what Hillary Clinton said yesterday. The Republicans are going to try and destroy her reputation. And they're going to, I mean, so we need to be aware. And mainstream media is going to pick up complete lies. She says, I'm still trying to get rid of the lie that I ran a pedophile, network from a pizzeria. And she said it cost me millions. No, but she said it cost me millions to get rid of that. And she said, and it cost me the presidency, it's sort of because people believe. So
they hear something and it never really goes away, does it?
Exactly. They don't even know where it came from. And then the moment that the New York Times picks it up or Wall Street Journal or whatever, then it's all of a sudden it's mainstream news. But so that's something we should be aware of. But I have a feeling people are a little bit more. I mean, I ran into a lot of Americans who said, I'm not proud to be an American anymore with everything that's, I've heard that a lot. And I'm feeling that people are now becoming proud again.
Well, there's something about, you talk about raising consciousness. And as you know, we agree very much on a lot of that. And there's something about taking the route of possibility, of joy, of connection versus actually this country is bad and we need to make it great again. But saying actually human beings are good, and whilst the situation isn't great right now, there's a lot of things we are getting right, that we are doing. And one of the things that's really easy is the kindness that neighbors show to each other. And we've seen that across the US in lots, with climate disasters coming through, floods, fires, and so on. Actually, people step in and they do help each other. And so to link to that is, in a sense, a higher degree of consciousness than, I was going to say everything is bad, people are awful, make America great, because they're not.
Somebody said yesterday, there's a whole list of wonderful things that the Biden administration has done. They just haven't been very, very good at communicating it. But, with the Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, with the bipartisan thing, I mean, they've actually, and like Josh Shapiro, I mean, they say it comes down to Pennsylvania, apparently. If you win Pennsylvania, then, you win the election. So that's why the debate was there, and she's been campaigning there massively. But he said, when I have a very important bill to pass, I always ask a Republican to join me in the mission, because he said humanity should be, the future of humanity, climate should be above the parties. And those are the kind of leaders that you need to have.
Yeah.
And I know that Kamala is also going to include, the Republican Party also has some wonderful people, they're not all crazy. They just let this guy overtake the party, which is stupid.
Yeah, I'm gonna tap Carrie, who I know is A, American, B, knows a lot about these things. Are you tapping away, Carrie, with a question or comment, or do you want to speak it out? Yes.
Well, I did tap it.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I was tapping because I don't really have anything more to say other than what I already put in the chat. It's just that even if Kamala wins, which I hope she will, and there is, I am feeling a renewed sense of energy as well, even though I'm not at Climate Week, around her presidency. I just do see that, we wield a disproportionate amount of power around the world, both from an, a media influence standpoint and, in every sense, in militarily. And so I feel very discouraged that we aren't, able to hold ourselves more accountable particularly for progress on climate. And we haven't heard her say much about it. I know she's walking a very fine line right now, but, and I know that it will be better if she's in office, but I think outside of political circles, we have to band together to do more to burnish our reputation with practical action on the global stage.
No,
I just responded that I've heard from people, in the government and close to her, also people at CGI, she will step up on that. She is, John Kerry and Al Gore, are like her mentors, on that. I mean, you need to imagine she was kept out of the limelight basically all of the presidency. Actually, we saw Joe Biden. He was here on Monday evening. We met, he was not as bad as the Republicans made him seem like. It's horrible that that debate went so bad. I think it saved the country in a way on the other hand, because it allowed for her to be able to step in. But she's had to, navigate everything. And I have a feeling that she is going to absolutely step up on the climate thing as well.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And because we in fairness haven't seen as much of that from the change in UK government as I think we'd hoped, where
She will.
We were sort of holding on, going, no, they're just campaigning, it's fine. Once they're in office, it will all be good, and yet we just haven't quite seen that. So
yes, I actually like what Rand says. If the head of one major country took a strange stance, it would supposedly have huge. Absolutely, I totally agree.
Exactly, and I think the US would be great. Oh, and Tim Walz's track record. What does it say, Paul?
National government. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
I don't know Tim Walz's record on climate actually, particularly. I know he's got a great social record. Paul?
Yeah, he's been a huge advocate on environmental policy and legislation as well. Okay. Likewise, people like Gavin Newsom, and not just Gavin Newsom as the governor. Stuff happening in California right now, Westmore and Maryland. There's amazing progress. A lot of it driven, as someone had touched on, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, driving almost $1 trillion worth of investment in energy transition that also has communities and many of the most underserved communities and groups at the front of the line for the transition as well.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Thank you for adding that, because that was exactly what she said yesterday, Jennifer.
Oh, good.
But I think what they're just not so good at is the storytelling. We were talking just about that now, I mean, it's all about, we need to get the stories out.
Yeah. Well, this is it. As you say, they're not good at communicating it. So we need to get that higher, but and do it in a way that doesn't alienate those people who might be natural skeptics or Republican voters who think, well, this is just about extra cost to me. It's just about woke. It's not real, right? And if nothing else, and I think John, was on the call, he might have just he's gone off camera for a second. Always says is there might be a sustainability depression in some way or recession at the moment, but we have to, the facts are there will the climate is in crisis, nature is in crisis, and we will keep hearing about it if we ignore it. So backlash or no backlash, it can't stay that way.
I've got to go in like 5 minutes, so just
All right, final questions. Any final questions for Karine? In theory, we have one more person coming on, but he's texted it. He's running late. Again, this is the fun bit of trying to do something live from New York. So we'll see.
yeah,
He may or may not turn up.
I like Tom Steyer. He's great. I met him in Dubai actually.
Oh, there we go.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
Any other questions for Karine? Any comments? Anything?
Would you have a recording of this? Because it would be good to share with the Hurry Up group. Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll have a recording and hopefully even a screenshot. I'm hoping Evgenia has done a nice screenshot. Oh, and I see John and Elaine. John, go for it.
I just wanted to say how much I'd enjoyed this, but the reason I was off screen was I was having an attack of COVID, so apologies. But several people have mentioned the generational dynamics and all of this, and the whole sustainability thing came from that intergenerational political angle in a way. And I don't know how many people on the call will have read Mauro Guillen, his book, The Perennials. But I only started to read it a couple of weeks ago, and I would recommend it incredibly highly, because what he's now deputy dean at one of the part of the Wharton School, but his thinking about where this generational siloing has got us, largely driven by marketing and those sorts of disciplines, and how it's backed us into a corner. And I in a way, I'd love to see him on a future book club, because I think it's an extraordinary analysis, very, very powerful and central to this whole change agenda. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. We'll read it.
Thank you, John. We'll post a link to that book, and I will, if anybody wants to hear more about the Hurry Up Club, I saw Ran and Carrie have both asked. Message me directly or email me at louise@volans.com, and I can connect you with Karine and the wonderful Hurry Up Club. Oh, it was Hurry Up Club. Now it's a Hurry Up group, which, in case you don't know, means hug. And whenever you go into one of these conferences or weeks, I always am so encouraged that you get lots of hugs from people say, I know your name, you're in the group, and lots of support for each other's actions, which is wonderful. Thank you, Ran, for that podcast. Karine, we'll let you go. Thank you for battling through the noise of Gold's House.
Yes.
Please continue to do your amazing work. And
I'm now up to the Climate Pledge, which was founded by, Christina Figueres was also part of that. So,
yeah.
I navigate from all these places. But for me, I really feel only hope.
Yes. No.
And you know what's interesting? There's not that much talk about the election, because it's just an election. And like Clinton said, if you enter a game, you need to, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So it's a game, but then let's just move on the next day, the 6th of November, and then just get on to work.
Well, I think that is a great call to action for all of us. We can't sit and wait for an election. We just have to keep the work. And that's why we all have to hurry up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point. So, so there we go. Thank you, Karine. Lots of love. I will see you soon.
Absolutely. I hope so. Thank you all for listening, for taking the time.
Thank you very much. There we go. We'll let her off. And we're still holding slightly for for our last speaker. And as I said, he texted saying he was running across town to try and get here. So he may or may not. But I just wondered, there's quite a lot of juicy questions and things to debate. Some of it we've handled in the chat already. But I just wonder if there's anything else anybody has seen or has looked at. Has anybody got FOMO that they're not at Climate Week? Or thinking, oh, thank God I kind of flip-flop between the two, thinking, oh, it'd be really nice to be there. And then thinking about the flight, the carbon miles, the circus. Who has anyone here been in the last few years? No. Oh, John went last year, and Paul, you've been. Paul?
Yeah,
Why-
many years.
So why are you not there this year?
Sorry.
So why are you not there this year? I guess all the others, why they're there.
Part of it is just that consciousness of there is so much now post-COVID of hybrid that many of the relationships that I have, you're always going to meet new people, and there's things that you absolutely miss out by not being physically present. But kind of for where I'm at and what I'm doing, I'm able to do this from Ireland virtually. Funny thing is that, Ireland as a country is just one of the local chambers had their quote unquote inaugural SDG week last year. So this is year number 2. And
Wow.
I had real cognitive dissonance from that. And going, inaugural event in 2023, what in the world? But part of my energy and focus is some of that networking and knowledge building and engagement on the ground with people here that just wouldn't even, think about going to New York. So I'm doing my hybrid stuff and my remote stuff, my virtual stuff with New York, and stuff on the ground here in Ireland, which is kind of cool.
Right. Anyone else? Ran, I see you and the Miles. And you've moved to a bioregional regeneration focus, yes. So that's the thing. As we become more, I guess, focused on regeneration and place-based, it becomes really interesting what role do these global meetings take in our lives, right? And in the importance of that. Nick, you've been Ran?
Well, just to fill time on that subject, talking about the built environment and talking about retrofit generally. And as an architect, I've always thought of it as just a technical exercise. We have to put in the insulation, we have to put in the heat pumps, and by some point around 2050, we'll have done every house on the planet and hand back the keys and sort of job done. But that position was challenged at an event last year when all the speakers were talking about it in much more touchy-feely terms. And I was not persuaded initially, but by the end of the day, I was.
Oh.
And you just said the term there. It's about placemaking, and it's about regeneration and so on, and just seeing the technicalities of retrofit as part of a much broader community rebuilding, regeneration, placemaking sort of effort. And the thing that really speaks to is that transition back from the global to the local, which has both positive and negative potentials to come out of it. It can be nationalism and protectionism and all that sort of stuff, but it can also be positive, and it's about actually knowing your community and supporting locals and that sort of thing. So I suppose it's just something I've become aware of recently that I haven't really given much credence to before.
It's interesting. I was at an event or a sort of dinner gathering last night with an organization here in the UK called Human Nature, which is using the built environment for exactly that. You probably know them. They've just had planning to build 700 houses, or a community. Actually, it's not houses. It's a mix of flats and houses, but really building a new neighborhood in Lewes in the south of England, in a national park on a brownfield site. But the idea is, how do you build that as a community rather than build some houses that then need retrofitting and so on. And the debate was, how do we, in the UK, when the new government has said in the next 5 years we're going to build another 1.5 million houses, how do we make sure that those houses are built in community in the right way with the right materials? Because we all know that the built environment is one of our biggest sort of carbon issues as we speak. Nick is nodding because you're doing lots of this stuff. Go on. Or not built environment, but place-based.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess my reflection is, I think but we're in nature, so we're in the restoration of nature, and I think there are some quite distinct differences between that and decarbonization. And listening to it, I hear quite a lot of differences. And so just kind of from a personal perspective, I think, yeah, the bioregional, the place-based stuff is very, very important and context. And I think certainly in my area, we find kind of big global gatherings quite distant from what we have to do, because they tend to come out with very standardized responses to things that actually require contextual place-based approaches. So standardization is an issue for us. But the thing that's really interesting about nature, I think, is that it's got, you know, suddenly everyone wants to be around nature. And I think the conversation has changed radically in the last year even. And you know, thinking about G, I think, you know, finance as it currently exists and nature don't really mix currently, and it feels like we're on the cusp of something very interesting in terms of redesigning financial systems for nature, as opposed to trying to crowbar nature into the current financial systems, which has been the bane of my existence for the last
I know.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, yeah, and what I love about there's one phrase from the land banking guys, which is decarbonization is dentist. We can't sell that. So I mean, I think nature is very cool, and and everyone loves animals and trees, and so yeah, nature. I think nature's in a good place right now. So
well, we need to, yeah, we might need to talk a little bit more. So we are we're honing in quite heavily on nature, probably with an inquiry the size of the Tomorrow's inquiry. So yeah, let's have a conversation about that potentially. I think I'm minded, much as I would love to wait for Marcus to turn up. Oh, there we go. Cramming nature back into current system takes us back to Laurie's original comment. I'm looking for the original comment. This was about the profits being measured in the wrong way. Yeah, exactly. That it does misrepresent. We do have to have a different view of value, right? Often when I'm asked to talk about nature and why nature and biodiversity is different to sort of different to carbon, because people in corporates often say, oh God, we've just done all that carbon stuff and climate stuff. Do we now need to do nature again? Same thing, you know, transition plans, etc. It just feels like a lot of, is there just more compliance coming? But really, I think one of the many opportunities in this nature discussion is that it could really break the spreadsheet capitalism, because you can't really put nature, you know, honestly in that spreadsheet. So hopefully that would just it will break that open, and we can talk about how do we value nature in many different ways. But it's a little bit like asking somebody how they put a metric and value their marriage. You know, you can come up with really good measurements like how many years you've put up with each other, or cups of tea you get, or amount of sex, or whatever it is you want, and actually none of those things add up to what happened, you know, a marriage, and how you might rate it or not rate it. And nature to me is a little bit similar. You could come up with all these wonderful metrics and still miss the total point of it. Go on, Nick, I see you trying to speak.
Just this point is absolutely spot on right now. But so I think what's happened in nature and markets thus far is that they've treated it very transactionally. So we went down a load of very bad roots with stuff like ecosystem services and the idea of even natural capital as something. And what we're finding now is that a completely different relationship between basically system actors and places, which is about reciprocal commitments and longevity. And that's completely transformed all of the discussions with brands and supply chains. It's nature in specific places as a value driver for their business, and it's just a complete 180. So yeah, so all the transactional stuff about can we buy credits and things like that. And suddenly we're in a very, very good place. So yeah, but it's all very messy and not formed yet. But
but that's the joy, right? Liminal.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yes, it is a joy.
Very messy before it gets to the new.
Yeah, it's a joy, but also, it's tricky for people like us, and where we're trying to run before.
Yes. So no, thank you, Jane. I think we're going to call it a day now anyway. The one thing that I've just got in my mind, I was really lucky last week to be part of a gathering that Christiana Figueres had sort of for climate and nature leaders. And one of the things she said was that we have to remember not to be the water drop, but to be the river. And to think about ourselves as that river, even if we are only a drop, and sort of flow together to have the impact. So she's radical collaboration and love, really. And so just to thank you all for joining this very exclusive little experiment we thought would be quite fun. We will get Marcus Extravort on a separate time. He is absolutely brilliant on this intersection of technology, climate, nature, finance, communications piece. And the Climate Majority Project is brilliant. Thank you. There's lots of really good things. We'll as ever send all the links out back to you so you don't miss out on any of them. And as I said, if there's any questions you have or thoughts you have, send them to us and we'll put them in our little email we send out when we send you the video back again. So for now, I'm just going to give us all 10 minutes of our life back to maybe go and appreciate nature for a couple of minutes and then get on with life. Thank you very much for joining and see you soon.
Thanks, Louise.
Bye.